So we meet two widows in our scriptures today. The first one, the widow of Zarephath with Elijah, and the second one, the widow that Jesus praised for throwing in those two small coins, all she had. In ancient Israel, it was not easy to be a widow. Widows could not inherit their husband's property. So you could be in a dangerous spot if your husband died. There was no welfare system, no safety net, and so you've all heard this phrase in the Bible, orphans and widows, orphans and widows. That means those were the two scariest things to be. They were broke, they were totally vulnerable. That was a risky class of people to be in, an orphan or a widow. So we meet the widow of Zarephath and the prophet Elijah. And there's a terrible famine in the land. And the widow is down to her last meal. So she's a widow, strike one. There's a drought in the land, strike two. She's on her last meal, strike three. She has hit rock bottom. There's nowhere lower to go. And Elijah comes. You know the story. God saves her and her son. The jar of oil does not run dry, the meal does not run out, and they don't starve. Our God comes to her at the moment of her greatest need and saves her. That probably sounds very familiar to you. A lot of my friends in AA said, I had to hit rock bottom. When there was nothing left, when I was totally desperate, I cried out to the Lord, and He saved me. I've heard that same story, not just from alcoholics, but from countless people over the years. I've kind of got a rock bottom story. I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but way back in 1977, I was sent to St. Charles, Illinois, to start a brand new parish. It was a cow pasture on the east side of St. Charles. There was no pasture there. It was in July. I got there, and the people were wonderful. Everybody rolled up their sleeves and helped. We had Sunday masses at the Ramada Inn. All the people in St. Charles called us St. Ramada. And things were going great. We were off to a great start. Had a fund drive to try to hire an architect and design a new church. But this is, of course, hindsight 2020. I was putting it all on my shoulders. It was like it was my project. It was my parish. It was something I was supposed to do. And I couldn't sleep. I would wake up at 5, 6 in the morning, go like mad all day. There was so much to do. It was me and a part-time secretary. I'd go to bed at 12 or 1 at night, think, surely I'll fall asleep. But I couldn't. It was like my body was exhausted, yearning for sleep. My mind was like a turbine engine. It wouldn't stop. Finally, at 3 or 4 in the morning, I'd drop off to sleep and wake up at 6 for Mass, go to bed that next night and think, surely I'll sleep tonight. No, night after night. And I remember around Thanksgiving time, there was a wonderful man in the parish, Leonard. He's up in heaven now. I think he'd had 3 or 4 nervous breakdowns. And I said, it was right around Thanksgiving time, I said, Leonard, let me take you out for lunch. So I did. I said, what's it like before you have a nervous breakdown? And Leonard told me, and everything he said, I had. Everything. I remember thinking, I think I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. And I remember one night, it was early December, I was kneeling by my bed, it was midnight, and I said, Lord, I'm going to mess this whole thing up. I'm just putting it all on my shoulders, like this is my parish, my project, what I'm supposed to do. And it's wrong. Please help me. And I begged God's help. I just begged Him to take it. I said, if there's going to be a parish here, it's because you're going to do it. It's according to your will, not mine. I pleaded with Him. And my shoulders was almost symptomatic from here to here, whatever this muscle is, was tight. It was always tight. Because, of course, I'd put the world on my shoulders. And I remember that night, it's almost like something snapped. And I fell in bed and fell asleep instantly. And as Jerome and Akan can tell you, I've slept great ever since. But that was my bottom of the well story, crying out to God. My point is, for all of us, at the moment of our greatest need, just like for that widow, if we cry out to God, He's there for us. It seems like when we're on top of the world, we don't reach out to God. When we're on the bottom and we cry out, God comes to us. Remember, St. Paul has that wonderful story in Corinthians. He said, 3 times I begged God in prayer to take away my thorn in the flesh. We don't know what the thorn in the flesh was. Thanks be to God. I'm glad we don't, because it could be each one of our thorns in the flesh that Paul was talking about. He said, 3 times I begged God in prayer to take that thorn away from me, and God said, no, my power is sufficient for you, because my strength is perfected in your weakness. Our Lord wanted Paul to depend on Him and not on Paul's many, many gifts in order to get the job done. But the point is, we don't need to flirt with a nervous breakdown in order to open our lives up to God. All we need to do is to live in the truth, live in what is always true. What's always true? Every one of us is always in need of God. On our most successful, awesome, top-of-the-world day, do I need God that day? You bet I do. Scripture says I need God to draw my next breath. If He would stop thinking of me, I couldn't draw another breath. We totally, totally need God every day of our life. But blessed are we if we know it. Blessed are we if we live our life. Good days, bad days, in-between days, live our life knowing, Lord, I need you totally. I could not do life without you. When we are in God, when we know we're living our life with God, and our God is nothing but gift. He gives us the world. He gives us our life. He gives us salvation on the cross. All God knows to do is to give. When we live our life in Him, then we can give more and more and never run out. I was thinking this week about Mabel and Art. They were our relatives. When we were little kids growing up, their farmhouse was a quarter mile down the gravel road we lived on. And we'd walk down to see them. We loved it because they were very traditional farmers. So like they had outdoor bathrooms. We thought that was so neat. We loved to use their outdoor bathrooms. And they had a pump. They had a pump there, a well pump, and there was always like a jug of water. Of course, if you drank the water, you weren't going to get any more out of that pump. So you had to take that water and you pump the pump handle and pour it down. And as you did, water just came gushing up out of that well. And you drink all you wanted, you're still pumping it, and then fill it up and leave it there for the next one. Now, you didn't have to do that. You could just drink the water, finish it up, and that would be it. That'd be all there was. The only way there was going to be more for you or anybody else is if you took that risk, that jump, and poured it down the well, down that pump. In other words, when we trust in God, who is only gift, who's totally gift, we're never going to run out of whatever it is. Water, life, love, whatever we're talking about. On the other hand, when we go after the substitutes for God, so like money or sex or pleasure or honors or power or mostly just having our own way, then even when we have enough, we never have enough. When we hoard and keep it all to ourselves, it's never going to be enough. Because we're not living that life of radical trust in God. We're living that life of radical trust in me. And good luck with that. I've been down that road. It does not work. It does not work. The widow and her son gave everything away. The oil, the meal, and so they ate always. When we give God away, we'll have God always. I grew up with messages like this in my big farm family. There's enough for everybody. Pass it on. Many hands make light work. I was thinking of the familiar story, you've all heard it, I love it, of this man who went down to hell, and there was this sumptuous table, remember, with every kind of food, fancy food you want, and the people were starving to death. And he looked and noticed they had huge forks and knives taped to their wrists, so when they got food in it passed by their mouth. They were starving in the midst of plenty. And then remember, he went to the heaven, the same tables, the same knives and forks attached to everybody's hands, and they were happy and well fed because, as you remember, they were taking the food and feeding it to their neighbor across the table. And so everybody had more than enough because they were taking care of their neighbor. Why? Because they learned that on earth. They learned on earth, it's not just about me. Give it away. God's going to provide. Be concerned about somebody else. See and look after others' needs. They learned on earth the skills they would need to survive in heaven. It's just a story, but I think it makes the point pretty well. It's the same with our faith, isn't it? I love that AA says, if you don't tell others about AA, you're going to lose your sobriety. Do you want to get stronger in your faith? Pass it on. Start talking about your faith. Kindly, gently, talk about your faith with other people. Your faith will get stronger. It's like using a muscle. The best way for you to deepen your faith is to share it with others. The best way to grow in love is to share that love with others. A little story, a true story I want to share with you. Friends of mine have taken in 55 foster children over the years, some of them for a week or a month, some of them for years. They took in, several years ago, 2 children. Jenny was 12, her brother Justin was 11. They'd been living on the streets in Belvedere. They went to the bathroom in coffee cans or when they could on construction site bathrooms. Jenny, the girl, had a contagious rash, huge red rash down her face and neck, big red blotches. It was February when they came to my friend's home. They had no coats. They had tennis shoes with holes in them. They had no socks. They had no underwear. February. When Jenny smiled, she had black holes in her teeth from decay. And one Saturday night, she lost one of her permanent teeth. So my friend said, we'll put it under your pillow and the tooth fairy will come tonight. And she said, who's the tooth fairy? They said, just put it under your pillow and we'll see. And she did. And the tooth fairy came and she got $1 and even a little more than $1 in change. Next morning she woke up and she held on to it. She wouldn't let it go. She was brushing her teeth and holding on to the money at the same time. My friend said, honey, why don't you just put the money in your pocket? No, she said, I might have a hole in my pocket. I'm not putting that money there. They went to Mass together, and the basket was being passed around. And Jenny asked my friends, why? What are they doing? And they told her, that's to share with people who don't have as much as we do. But Jenny put 10 cents in her hand. When basket came, she put the 90 cents into the basket. And she said to my friend, I think I'll keep a little bit back for myself. That changed their lives. They had been dropping a $20 bill most of the time in the collection basket. That day they became tithers. They started tithing. They stopped just giving from their surplus, like the Pharisees in our gospel tonight, and they gave the first fruits, just like Jenny had. Everything we have is from God. Everything is from God. He never stops giving to us our whole life long. Once we get that, we become givers. we become sources of life for everybody we meet.